So my name is Abby. I'm from the Minnesota State University Moorhead Planetarium, and I work with Dr. Sarah Schultz. A little bit about me. I am actually a chemistry major and more of a planetarium enthusiast. So I'm not like a physics student or education student, but I've been working at the planetarium for about 4 years, and I do a lot of presenting, show development, and help with our intro astronomy classes. But I'm also a violinist, and I've been playing violin for about 13 years. So the violin part is important because it was what inspired me to work on the first show that I did for the planetarium, which was based on Gustav Holst's The Planets. Those of you who are at eLIPS2021 might remember me presenting about it. It's basically a solar system tour combined with the history and mythology and some of the music of Gustav Holst's famous orchestral piece. So kind of the gist of the show, an example would be Mars. We talk about the history of the piece. Mars was composed in August 1914, just prior to the outbreak of World War I, and the kind of themes in the music make you think of soldiers marching forward into battle. And it also makes you think of the Roman god of war. Holst was actually inspired by the astrological characters of the planets. So he was inspired by the astrological view of Mars as being angry and prideful, and then connecting those things to actual features about the planets. So the blood red color of Mars is perfectly acceptable for an ironclad war god, angry and ready for battle. And this was a very popular show at our planetarium, and it's a lot of fun to do, but it's just a live show. I'll be graduating at the end of this academic year, so Sarah really wanted to be able to capture this show in a form that could be played again. And we had never done converting a live show to a full dome recorded movie before. And those of you who work in full dome movie production, anything that I have to say is probably not super helpful. I'm a total newbie, and Sarah hasn't done a lot of this stuff before either. So we had a lot to learn. My experience recording a show, I already had a show written, so that part wasn't hard. I did have to send probably 1 million emails asking for help, asking for permission for using audio, all sorts of things. I learned about copyright for audio and pictures, and I got help with audio recording and recording in open space. So this project isn't completely done right now. We still have to combine the frames and the audio in order to render a video that we can play in our dome. And we'll probably end up keeping the final product confined to our dome because, as I learned, distribution of things that involve audio, especially audio that someone else made, is kind of a nightmare. The first step was learning about using music and images in a way, like we had just kind of done whatever we want because it's just in our dome. We're not selling it to anyone. But if I was going to be recording something and it would stick around for a while, I wanted to make sure I was doing things right. So these presentations by Chris Reed were very, very helpful, and you can find them on the Pacific Planetarium Association webinars. And then I had to get permission for the recording of the planets that I was going to be using. So this is where the 1 million emails comes into play. The music of the planets is in the public domain, but the recording that someone makes is not. You have to get permission. I tried to find stuff that was in the public domain. MuseOpen is a source for finding public domain audio, but the recordings that they had of the planets were kind of cruddy. The record labels that I tried to talk to didn't really want to talk to me because I wasn't some big studio willing to shell out thousands of dollars for the recording. And it was kind of the same with publishing companies. So what I ended up doing was contacting symphony orchestras in Minnesota, where if they make their own recording, they just have to give someone permission, and they usually ask their musician's union, and you have to draft a contract or an agreement specifying how it will be used. So I ended up getting permission from the Mankato Symphony Orchestra to use their recording that had been recorded by their college's radio station. And in the process, I tried to document everything that I could. It was helpful to have a description or purpose kind of statement to send out so that people knew what this project even was. For all the images that I used, I kept track of where exactly they came from and what kind of licensing they were. And same with how exactly I used any audio that was coming from someone else. I kept track of where it came from, how much I used, and where it would be in the show. Just in case someone asked me, or years down the road, someone asked Sarah, they would be able to find where exactly these things had come from. So I learned from the Pacific Planetarium Association webinars a bit more about pictures. So I tried to look for things that were in the public domain or had some sort of Creative Commons license. In some cases, I just had to make things myself. So I'd found a cartoon of Holst conducting the solar system, but I didn't want to have to pay for it or ask for permission. So I just made something similar using my own artistic abilities. And then all of my pictures I put into a slide deck in OpenSpace. So there are kind of two parts, recording video and recording audio. And I had to decide which one I wanted to do first. We had limited access to a recording studio, but basically unlimited access to our dome. So I figured we would do audio first, then video. This picture is meant to show kind of the opposite, where I talked with our recording studio director, and we were talking about how for movie music, they'll have the movie already made and then have this whole big production of musicians having to play according to the video. And that sounded like it would be really, really hard to have the video already made and having to do my narration and playing violin, trying to match up with the video. It seemed like it would be easier to go the other way around, where I have a set audio and then can take as many tries as I want recording the video. So for the audio, I needed my own violin playing, plus the narration, plus the recording from the ensemble. So the ensemble recording was already done, so I just needed to do violin and my own narration. And before you record, since we only had limited access to a recording studio, I made sure to practice, because recording a presentation is much worse than doing it live because it sticks around. I have this picture from recording a presentation for a GLIPA conference, and it really did feel like take 374 because I would trip up and not want to have that be stuck forever. So while we did have a fairly decent microphone in our planetarium, obviously if we're doing a movie, we want the best audio we can get. So we asked for help from our recording studio director, who's in charge of the entertainment industry technology department. And we recorded my violin parts and the narration. And it was a really cool experience, and it went very smoothly since I had practiced it so much, recording or having presented the show many times before and then practicing before I actually went to record. Then it came using OpenSpace to record the video. And I figured out that I needed to have pre-recorded flight paths of the appropriate length to match the length of the audio sections that I had. And then I would export the images or export as frames so that they could be turned into a video and combined with the recorded audio. And in order to learn more about OpenSpace, Sarah and I had to ask for help. So we got some help from Ken Murphy at Southwest Minnesota State University, and we got a lot of help from Micah. We ended up using a fisheye projection window and a GUI window so that it would export the screenshots of both. So you don't have the GUI up on the projection window. And the fisheye is kind of like a dome master. So that's exactly what we were looking for, to be able to easily turn it into a full dome movie. There were a couple options for exporting frames. Option 1 was using the command window with a certain command that you'd have to type in, and it will output frames into the screenshot folder of OpenSpace, and you can decide how many frames per second you want. And recently I discovered that Micah or someone else had made this much easier in the recording session window, where it's in the GUI. So you can just click that you want to export frames at a certain frames per second. So you just pick the file that you want to play back, and then it will spit out all of the screenshots. So the next steps are to finish all the recordings in OpenSpace and then export all the frames and have someone help me combine the audio and frames in order to make a full dome movie. So I did some of the OpenSpace recording, enough that I needed for doing the presentation live, because I needed to have flight paths from each planet to the next, but I didn't have anything, or I don't currently have anything for the interim parts where I'm at each planet, but that will be soon.
Abby, what software are you using for video editing?
Good question. Like I said in my first slide, I'm a chemist. So I don't have any video editing experience. So I will need, we have some students working at our planetarium who have video editing experience, and they would probably figure out what to use.
Worst case, we'll probably end up using maybe like Blender or something, but it just depends on who does it for us.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you need help. And I'm a chemist too, so there.
Nice.
Hi, Abby, Benjamin. So I'm a little curious. So you were recorded your own violin playing of what in particular?
So the planets is 50 minutes long, and my show is supposed to be about an hour long. So I had to be selective about what parts I would play. And same with the recording from Mankato. So for each movement, I just picked a certain phrase or melody to play, so that when the audience members listen to it next time, they'll be like, oh, that's that thing that she was talking about. Do you want specific examples?
No, I was just curious. So you were picking phrases to illustrate something musically before you would play the actual piece.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
Abby,
Cool.
This is Ken. Do you guys have a sample clip you could show us, since we have a few minutes here?
Unfortunately, no.
But you can buy the show, Ken. No, they're not selling it. They're not distributing it.
Oh, we can't do that. We'll get in trouble.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how long I would be able to talk, and I had hoped that I would have a little sample. So that's why weeks ago I said maybe I should go for 30 minutes, but it probably should have went for 15.
You did great. Just gives us more time with you.
I would
have
ask
questions.
if, I guess something I haven't asked you guys yet, and hopefully it's not too late in the process for me to ask you guys this, but like, have we talked about at all the resolution that you will be outputting the frames in, the K quality of that the ultimate video will be?
I think we talked about it a little bit, but I haven't done enough testing of, like, I would like to just test little bits at a time before I export everything and have it be like really cruddy.
Cool. Okay.
Well, did you record it on your dome or did you record it on your computer?
Well,
It's
like the fisheye examples that I had were just on the computer.
Oh yeah, you're going to want to do the exporting on your actual dome.
Mhm.
Because Sarah, what's your dome resolution?
so
I think Michael wants to jump in on this. I'm gonna
Yeah.
let him field it.
with open space, it'll actually work a little different. But to be honest, I guess it depends on how your dome's set up. There could be a different way. Like with open space, I could be running this just on my computer, and I'm running it in a fisheye window, and I can make that window any resolution that I want. And I can even make the window one size and the rendering buffer inside of the window a different one. So you could be running on a 1080p monitor and render an 8K screenshot out of it.
Yeah,
And
but if Sarah doesn't know, it means she's rendering at like, what is it, 1K by default, right?
yeah. That's why I was like, oh, I guess I hadn't brought this to them yet.
Yeah,
But
no, we haven't addressed that yet, but I think we're still probably a little ways out before that would really make a difference. We haven't gotten as far as we had hoped to.
yeah, I mean,
Well, like I said, we can talk offline if you need help, Sarah.
Definitely. Thanks, Jeff. Say, Abby, if you have a minute, do you want to talk a little bit about your chemistry program that you're working on?
Okay. So I've been working on a kind of chemistry of the solar system show that's a very similar format. I really like the solar system tour format. Just kind of going and visiting each planet and talking about something that's interesting about the chemistry of the planet. I know that for Mercury, the Messenger mission, and there's some layers in open space that show like the elemental composition of certain areas. So that's still a show in progress, but it's kind of fun. I mean, for a way to start it, there's the classic Carl Sagan time, where how do you make an apple pie from scratch? You must first invent the universe. So talking about elemental composition, but kind of what I wanted to do was talk more about molecules and reactions, because that's more of what chemistry is. We have like a full dome show that's a chemistry show, and it just focuses on elements. I'm like, well, that's cool, but that's not what we spend a lot of time learning about. So I would start with like a basic spectroscopy stuff, because that's what a lot of learning about chemistry is. I really like a lot of the like moon rock stuff, and even just talking about sample collection and how the astronauts did that, because I watched a really cool video about it, and they like kept track of how exactly the rocks were oriented on the planet so that they could know when they're on Earth exactly how it had been on the moon. And for Mercury, I would talk about the Messenger mission. Venus is mostly about the atmosphere. For Earth, talking about what makes water special. Mars has a lot of cool like chemistry experiments that have been done on the planet with the rovers. Jupiter atmosphere and the different colors, kind of what people think, what compounds cause the different colors, that sort of stuff.
and I have heard of all of those different items that you mentioned, but I had never like heard of them considered like together as a chemistry of the solar system thing. So I think that's neat, because it's like individually I had heard of them all, but never as like like the chemistry of what we got going on.
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, it can be for Abby as well, and just for anyone. But when you have something other than astronomy, I was curious, yeah, how do you send messages out to teachers, or, contact the colleges, or do you just kind of hope that people will come? That's all. Yeah, I was just curious.
So for me, I kind of just I like to say that I take kind of a manure spreader approach where I just throw crap at everybody and see what sticks. So essentially, I mean, anytime I talk to anybody, like, oh, what do you do? Oh, should we do something in the planetarium? Yeah, let's try it. And so I just pretty much like, I've been building this up over the years that I've been the director, and sometimes it takes a while for those seeds to actually germinate, but basically anytime I talk to anybody, it's like, oh, hey, you want to come and check out the planetarium? We might be able to do something cool. And usually if you have enough of a conversation, then they either make a connection, they're like, oh, hey, we could do this, or I do. And I'm like, hey, I've been looking for someone to do this. Would you want to come and try that out? So it's really just throw it at everybody and see who it sticks to.
That would have
Yeah,
been a
and I
good question
feel like-
for Keith Davis, actually, because he works with all other departments at Notre Dame and has to drum up interest.